go. Oh, what a wonderful day. What a wonderful day. This is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. I guess they recognize we must take a vacation, which we're about to do. Once again, this is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and welcome to the Comeback Conversation with Dr. Clarke. We're just having a very interesting time. How's my audio coming through, Dr. Cheryl? Dr.
Loud
Cheryl?
and clear. Loud and
Oh,
clear.
okay, good, good, good. The reason, well, we'll talk about that off camera. Usually before we go live with all of you great people, usually play some music, but I don't know what's going on. Maybe my computer is ready to prepare for the next retrograde. So it's just acting the way it's acting. And how are we doing today, Miss Johnson?
We are in the pre-shadow of retrograde, but
Yes.
otherwise we're doing good.
Excellent. And how's everything with you, Mr. Richards, all the way from St. Martin?
All things are great and great in yourself.
Doing good, doing good. We're gonna have a great time. We won't be on long as we're preparing. We all in prep mode. I know here in my household, we're getting ready for the cruise that's about to happen at the end of this week. And so, there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of energy, a lot of good energy, because it's good to, be at a space where you can see that your contributions and your exploits are starting to generate a space where people are going to enjoy themselves. And I know not only giving myself credit, but sometimes you gotta give people their hand claps and their possibilities and probabilities, when they can hear it. So, let me shout out Dr. Cheryl Clarke for all that she has done in that respective space to make sure that we're gonna have a good old time. We all had our contributions, but give people their props, you know. And so once again, kudos to Dr. Cheryl Clarke for helping to spearhead
Thank
and
you very much. I accept.
oh Lord, she gonna accept that. Before I go through the regular monologue, I don't know if she's ready to come on camera, but I would like Miss Nicole Johnson to come on camera for a hot second, if she can. Let's see if we can see her face. See, we can see Miss Johnson's face. Did you hear her voice? Hear all the great exploits that she usually does when she's assisting us. There she is. There she is. The reason why I'm doing this, especially on this day, before we even get into the presentation, which is more or less, we're going to do a mid-year synopsis of what we've been talking about, give everyone an opportunity to chime in, because this is a global community, global platform. But it'd be remiss of me before we take our little holiday, our little, siesta, as they would say in certain countries, and not to wish Miss Nicole Johnson a happy birthday that's coming up. So I know,
Birthday!
Lord have mercy. I was about to say, Dr. Shaw, you might as well open up your video because you can sing happy birthday to Miss Johnson. Yes, we're gonna embarrass her a little bit.
We don't need to do that. We could say it in our hearts. What is in the heart?
Why not?
It be in my heart. I would not be coming on camera, but God bless you.
Why not? Why won't you be coming on camera? We're gonna act. See, we acting a little rambunctious today. We all are. We all are. It's all good. It's all good. But once again, all jokes aside, we desire to thank Miss Johnson for all the exploits. She keeps us on track. Sometimes she cracks the whip. Sometimes she does the innuendo thing to get me to do certain things that can help you out and help the platform out. And those things do not go in a space of being not recognized or feel like they're not unwarranted. So when you recognize that you have good people on your team, you always desire to make sure that they get acknowledged. So once again, do you know when your solar return is coming in, or have you calculated that already? Or
No, I'm going to do that right now. I forgot. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot.
That's right. Calculate when your solar return comes in, because just because our birthday may lands on a particular date, depending upon the minute and the degree that we were born in, that's when our actual solar return. No, we're not surmising or worshiping the stars. For some of you who are moving in that particular space, because if that was the case, then you should be mad at the Catholic Church that every year, Easter falls on a different day, and it's always, that first is usually that first sun in, or the moon cycles. They go by the moon cycle. So if I'm not saying, I think it's the first new moon is around the time when Easter falls upon. So, you don't get mad when Easter doesn't fall on the same day. It fell on one day, next year it could be in March, or it could be late April, it could be early April, it could be in the middle of March, it could be in the middle of April. Who knows? It's always dependent upon how the movement celestially. So, once again, we desire to make sure that we acknowledge before we jump into anything else how, Miss Johnson has been a positive, excellent part of this community. Amen and amen and amen. So we are just good. Happy solar return. Happy birthday. Dr. Cheryl refuses to come on camera and sing the hat because I think she has her suit on and she was going to come out there and start dancing around with the bunny hat on, but I guess she decided against that. So, hopefully next year we can see her in a bunny suit. But other than that, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Anything, Dr. Cheryl? Come on, since you're not showing us the bunny suit.
Oh, no, I love her. God bless you, Nicole. Love you much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So without further ado, we're misbehaving today. Let me just check something before I click over there. Is this thing okay? I want to desire to make sure that this thing is ready to roll. So when we come over, good. Okay, good. Okay, let's share the screen. Let's jump into this because we won't be long. We will not be long. Share my sound. Click here. Let's see. We're going to hide that. Yeah, we're hiding that. What else? Make sure I got this thing correct. Just don't mind us. Right now, I'm just doing it directly from Gamut this week. Let's see. Let's hide the video panel. There we go. How are we looking at now? We can see our screen.
Crystal clear.
Excellent. So this is just a synopsis because as we're now moving into the space that we are in the Cancer season, the Cancerian time frame. Anytime you hit Cancer, number one, we hit the time of the year where we have the longest day of the year. And then after that, we start losing a minute or two. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but then we're moving from the summer solstice to the winter solstice. The winter solstice is the shortest day out of the year. So around the end of December last year, we started to recognize that, I decided to recognize that there were certain things that we were going to do with the Comeback Collective Circle, which were going to be beneficial and impactful. And I knew that we needed certain pillars. And I knew if we don't know about our mindset and our being, that won't benefit us in the long term. And at the same time, if we're not good with our money and we don't have financial literacy, that's not going to work. And also, if we're not aware of what's going on, not only socially, politically, what's going on from a world dynamic, because we're no longer in that space where we're just, beholden to ourselves. No, we are in a global community, and certain decisions and certain things that may happen can affect all of us globally. So we're going to just touch into that as, we're at the mid-year point, mid-year thoughts for 2026. An intellectual journey across the past 6 months, and we're dealing with the 3 pillars about this community as we keep emerging in a world rewriting itself in real time. That's one of the great things about it. This thing is not moving like, oh my God, this is going to happen sometime way down where. No, it's happening in real time. And so it's great to have these relevant experiences. Okay. We're here. Cool. Why is it taking so long? Presentation mode. See, I'm learning on the fly too. I'm learning on the fly too. There we go. Now, pillar number 1, financial literacy. Teaching what schools won't. That's one of the things that we do here at the Comeback Conversations and overall as a community, the Comeback Collective Circle. So, Miss Johnson, can you read that 47% and what that looks like for us?
47% adult literacy rate. U.S. adults currently answered only 47% of basic finance questions in 2026, a 10-year low. Wow. Down from 52% in 2020.
Excellent. And Dr. Cheryl, can you read the 38% for us as well?
Okay. I don't have my glasses. Hold on. I'm on my phone. I can't see this. Sorry.
38%, 38% Gen Z scored the lowest of any generation. More than 1/3 of Gen Z fall into the very lowest financial knowledge category. And one of the things that we are recognizing, which is so detrimental, is that as some of us who may be Gen Xers, we're starting to recognize that there are certain things that we can't really position some certain millennials and definitely certain Gen Zs to be aware of or to be in the possibility of moving with some sort of mechanics. And so what is one of the things that we have built here as I love using Gamma to create my decks, debt mechanics and how debt traps compound over time. The worst thing about debt is not a bad thing, because debt, if you use debt properly, you can turn debt into something that becomes a benefit for you, especially if you use the debt to purchase an asset and then the asset's making money. Then you're in the space of, okay, you use the debt wisely because you're servicing the debt while you're still growing the asset and you're making money. That makes sense. But too many times the debt trap happens when you have access to credit and just utilize it for things, or sometimes you just utilize it for experiences, not recognizing how you're going to pay for it. So we're recognizing that with Gen Z, with their score, and another reason why I decided to do it like this, so we can have the real-time data for this time period as we're talking about the end of June going towards early July. So that means the United States is about to celebrate its 250th year anniversary, even though this past weekend to me was, for certain communities, that was our Independence Day. I don't worry about July 4th anymore. Look, at June 19th is the time frame where that's the time frame we celebrate our culture, celebrate our people, celebrate what we have to offer. And so we have to be very mindful that with Gen Z score, and myself and Dr. Cheryl have 4 of our children who are in the Gen Z, who fall in that Gen Z area. That just lets us kind of know when we look at certain things or certain aspects of how they move with money, regardless of how much that we desire to teach them or show them or to give them an experience or to be in conversation about it. That's kind of scary to me as I started looking at the numbers. Compound interest, the most powerful and least taught concept. See, a lot of times we're taught how to save money. We're not taught how to grow money. Even as I think about myself and Dr. Cheryl, we at times, we counsel people or especially couples and things like that, and we hear a lot about saving money. You gotta save money, save money. Saving money is good to a point. Because if you're just a perpetual saver, which is a good thing, which means you're not necessarily spending your dollars on things, but your money's not necessarily growing. And as we have recognized with all the inflationary things that have occurred over this past 6 months, I can't even say it yet, the past 6 months, you start to see that if you don't have your money growing in things that has the potential to add, then you're still falling further behind, even if you're not doing stuff that's not beneficial for you. And building wealth inside a tariff disruptive inflationary economy. That's what Mr. Trump has presented us. This is what some of those people voted for in November of 2024. And it's now all coming up to pass. And as we see in the caption, schools won't teach this, but we will. That's why we invite you all the time to join and become part of the Comeback Collective Circle, because we're willing to put you in those spaces and places, not to be confronting or to be disrespectful or detrimental, but recognize sometimes the tree needs to be shaken if you want the fruit to drop off. Standing there just looking up at the fruit is not going to do anything unless you're willing to put some action behind it. Any thoughts coming up for anyone before we move on to the next deck? Part of this deck. Anything, because this kind of scared me. Go ahead.
Yes, what I would say to that is that the comeback community has brought up relevant, real time conversations about what's happening. And I think that that's where we may be locked out of the opportunities, because now we're not seeing that those conversations that we need to have relative conversations about, and then the tools to advocate for ourselves. Because I don't think that we advocate for ourselves either. I know you mentioned a lot of times of going into the community on the community boards. They have a lot of weight, but we do not have conversations about it. The Democratic, you like you said, let's go the local Democratic council. Those make a difference. But if you're not have a vote out there, how many times do we sit home and we don't even vote? So I will say that you have brought that to bear here, is that your vote counts. Just because they always say, oh, I got to go out for the presidential vote. No, those little votes that you have to be able to see, who do I have as my district council, my community board member? All you know what they're voting, because we look at our house where we are in the Bronx, and they took away so many parking spaces with bikes, and those people don't even use the bikes. So this is where you really have to talk up for your community, and I thank God that you are keeping us abreast of real time situations and not complete.
Yes, Ms. Johnson.
Yeah, just from the slide and what we're talking about financial literacy, I was trying to think back to high school, and I can remember parts where they taught us how to trade the stock market, how to follow a stock from the newspaper, but I don't remember us ever talking about insurance or generational wealth. That conversation I can't recall. And also speaking to Dr. Cheryl's statement, in the last 2 days, I've been reading about another community going into areas of upstate New York and New Jersey and essentially taking over school boards, taking over community boards, and shutting down schools, firing teachers, and shifting all the funding to their demographic group. And a lot of people didn't realize what was happening because they figured, if it's not the president, I don't need to vote for anything else. It's just the president, that's it. But if you're not paying attention, which is what this community does well, is kind of point you in the direction of where you should kind of start paying attention, start researching. You lose all access to power that you had, that you weren't even aware that you had. So I think a great part of this community is raising our awareness before we lose all possibility of self-governance. And I'm complete.
Thank you for that. And we appreciate that. And we all are contributing towards that, because it's not just top heavy. What it is that I love the fact that when King Arthur was the King of England, he went from the hierarchical space, even though he was still the king. Everyone still recognized his authority, but he had enough wisdom. Whereas he said, make my table round. And they're like, why would you do that? He says, number one, I will be able to see everyone that's at the table because it's circular. And number two, if I'm desiring for people to assist me in the governance of the people, making sure that we're dealing with the concerns of the people. There's a different vibration that happens when we sit at a circle or people sit around a campfire that is different than when you're looking at a long table and there's a head of the table, and then everyone else is attempting to genuflex or move towards the person who's at the head of the table. But at a circle, you don't necessarily see the head. And I even liken it back to when he talked about with Jesus. And no, we're not in Bible study. We're about to go into the next slide. But there was a time frame, even towards the end of his ministry, where even when they was coming to get him, they didn't know who Jesus was because every one of the disciples, they all looked similar. Everyone knew that he was the rabbi, and they were looking for Jesus of Nazareth. But initially, they couldn't pick out like, oh, just we no, they all we can't just grab them all. We're looking for the one called Jesus. And so when you're in that type of circle, you start to recognize, and that's what we're building here is this circle, is recognizing that we're moving from the space of just being information that's top heavy to recognizing it's about application, moving in principle, because the principle doesn't lie. The principle works in every country. It doesn't just work here. It doesn't just work there. It works everywhere. And that's one of the main things as we continue to build this global community. Now, pillars 2 and 3, ontology meets geopolitics. Pillar 2, ontological space, ontology as a survival skill. In an era of AI-generated content and algorithmic reality, understanding how we construct truths became urgent, not just academic. Because one of the things that we had to recognize is that when we started getting into ontology and said, what's that word? And why we keep emphasizing that here as a part of this community? Because that resonant space of understanding how being works, like we've said probably in plenty of other conversations, someone can sit here right now today and says, yo, I'm gonna give you $10 million. And depending upon that person's mindset, if their ontological space is off, it's the same way as just throwing that money out the window. And it reminds me of a movie of a great, comedic actor, Richard Pryor. There's a movie called Brewster's Millions. And probably for some of you can find the time to catch it. But the whole thing about it was that, Richard Pryor's character was the long lost grandson or grand nephew of someone who was very, very wealthy. But the man had a very distinctive plan. Before this man can get his hands on the particular dollars or the particular inheritance, he had to circulate X amount of millions of dollars. And everyone thought this man was crazy. Throughout the movie, Richard Pryor, people was like, why are you spending money on this and circulating money on that? You're wasting. Not recognizing that there were other forces on the backhand side, and that sometimes we see that as a microcosm of what happens sometimes to the Black community. You have some forces in the background trying to make sure he doesn't hit the mark, that he doesn't achieve the goal, so he can get the real pot. And part of it was that he couldn't say anything. So he's going through this movie, and people are sitting there like, wait a minute, seems like you have no respect for money. And it wasn't that. It's part of the stipulation that he couldn't talk about it. But one of the things that we have to recognize, that was a space that he was learning, his ontological space of how he's going to interact with money. Money is important. Money's not something that's over there and we're over here. No. We're supposed to have money. We're supposed to have the wealth. We're supposed to be able to navigate it, not for ourselves, but to recognize how we're positioning it so that we can not only just help ourselves, but help our community. So identity in digital spaces, how institutions shape and perceive reality, and the gap between narrative and lived experiences. And one of the things that we deal with here in the circle is the connective thread. Financial systems and geopolitical are both ontological constructs. They exist because we collectively agree they do. See, and that's why it brings us to pillar 3. And I'm going to ask Ms. Johnson, can you read pillar 3? Because you'll see why financial systems in geopolitics is a big thing when people start to say, oh, I don't know, I don't care what's happening over there. No, you should care what's happening over there. The same way people care about what's happening over here. And if we don't have a mindset or the outlook to be like, wait a minute, I need to know what's going on, because that can affect my bottom line, even though it's happening over there. So, Ms. Johnson, what does pillar number 3 state?
Pillar 3, geopolitics, the world rewired. U.S.-Iran war and peace deal, February to June 2026. Strikes launched February 28th. By June 18th, Trump signed an initial peace deal in France, reopening the Strait of Hormuz and pledging a $300 billion, one more time, 300 billion US dollar reconstruction plan. New economic nationalism. Washington's muscular intervention became the global playbook, reshaping the state market relationship worldwide. EU-China collision course. Trade tensions escalating across EVs, solar, and semiconductors.
See, like on the day of this taping, which is a Tuesday, there was a point in time today that not because only the AI boom, or some people feel like this feels like the year 2000 when they was talking about the internet boom, where there was people becoming billionaires overnight. Then all of a sudden, when the bust happened, right around after Y2K, going into like early 2001, all of a sudden the NASDAQ started crashing, started just all these different companies, because they said, wait a minute, we've been giving y'all all these high valuations, but recognizing y'all either not making money or don't have anything that is, beneficial that we can tangibly see. So of course now they started breaking them down. But what's so funny to me about it is that, and that's probably why Nicole emphasized the 300 billion, was that the 44th president, who happened to have his presidential library and wonderful campus out there in the south side of Chicago open up this past weekend, had a plan, used the diplomats, not real estate developers, had individuals who actually sat there and was like, recognized, like, look, we have to figure out a way how to work in a geopolitical manner. And no, it wasn't perfect. Even he says it wasn't perfect. No, there's no perfect thing. And that's why sometimes it gets me more disturbed when people attempt to hold us to a higher standard that they don't even give themselves. He knew it wasn't perfect. It was about the negotiation process. That's how you really stay in business. You negotiate. It says, look, okay, we can have you do this, you can get that. And it was nowhere near the number that Miss Nicole Johnson just spread. If anything, they had sanctions, and there was still billions of dollars of their money that was held in escrow because, like, yo, you're not going to be a good global citizen. You're not going to have access to your capital. It's not that we're taking your capital. You just won't have access. It's just sitting there. But we have someone who's orange who decided that he was going to get played by another country. And all the other previous presidents who never did anything like this, we found the I hate to say it, but it's the truth. We found the dumbest one to go enact something that became a certain level of nationalism. This thing like, we're the best, and rah, 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 rah. It's like, it's very European-like. They brought that Europeans here because if you notice, every world war, as we've seen, as history has shown, so it's not even hearsay, but every world war has started in Europe because y'all don't know how to act. So we bring that energy from your Germanic background, and you somehow became president because you created that white nationalism here. And now all of a sudden, you're affecting the dollars and cents of not only your citizens that you are allegedly, based upon the Constitution, supposed to be taking care of, but you're affecting the whole global diaspora. And the reason why the EU-China thing I'm bringing up, because we bring about things of geopolitical politics and happenings around, because there's different things that people are not going back and forth with because of this economic nationalism. Because China is very strong when it comes to certain things with solar and semiconductors and electronic vehicles, and now the EU, who's attempting to move into a space that they're attempting to clear their roads and get more into all these things that are renewable energies that allegedly the United States we were moving towards until we got the orange man in the office. We're not recognizing that we can make a decision over here that can affect over there. And so even though we're starting to see gas prices come down, but in the long term, it's going to be at least a year before you feel anything that says, oh, I feel a little bit more comfortable about my economic space. So if you do have those anxious moments, or maybe move into the space where you feel a little bit frazzled, you have every right to be. It's not necessarily because you have been doing things that's incorrect. You're being frazzled by the high prices, you're being frazzled by the inflation, you're being frazzled by all the weird and dumb decisions that are being made that make no sense. But we have to go through this process because eventually there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Any thoughts before we move on to pillar number 4?
I have a couple of thoughts.
Go ahead.
Right now, we're in the end of June 2026, and it's the World Cup that's taking place in the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Yes.
And the funny thing a lot of people are saying is like, wow, America has so much pride. Everything is so national. There are flags everywhere. And these are Europeans, people who have felt the negative effects of, I'll call it, over nationalism or even separatism. They felt it, realized it didn't work, and turned away from it. And somehow we've gone backwards to actually hurt our populace even more by maintaining these nationalistic views that always end up costing us more money. Because we're like, we're the best, we're the best. We're imposing tariffs, not realizing the tariffs we're paying in return are higher. And now the Strait of Hormuz still bothers me. Because that used to be free. And if somebody used to travel on trains and bridges and they were free, to not have to pay a toll is painful. And I'm complete.
Exactly. And, when you see, even as they said, in the slide about June 18th, when Trump signed it and then the Iranian government signed it on their end, until February 28th, no one paid a penny. Commerce was moving. The ships for the past probably close to 100 years that we recognize all the oil that in the Middle East that they had, and they started able to be a part of the global trade. They weren't just considered, because at one point, they considered Arabs, and I hate to say it, like the sand N-words. And now all of a sudden, when they started to generate wealth, now all of a sudden you don't call them that anymore. But during this time, the Strait of Hormuz, which is, as they show, between Oman and what is now Iran, was never bothered. Because everyone recognized, this strait, people bringing in their big tankers, they filling the tankers up. This is commerce where everyone's making money. The ship comes back the other way, goes out into wherever they're supposed to end up as their landing point, and global commerce is moving. Now we get an idiot in the White House who creates a scenario that now you have countries talking about, well, maybe we may have tolls now. We're going to add, if you desire to come through and leave out, there's tolls. Like how New York State is a very toll state. We're a toll state. For those of you who may not know about New York, we got tolls everywhere. We even got tolls now to go into Midtown Manhattan, and you can live in the city. It don't cost you a toll. You drive your car into Midtown Manhattan, a part of the city. That's another question, another irateness for another day. But it just lets you know that why here at the Comeback Collective Circle, we desire above all things that we have these relevant conversations, not just one side. It's not meant to be boring. It's not meant to be just like we're just trying to teach you abstract things. No, it's about practicality. It's about recognizing the principles that do work and how you can apply the principles so you can benefit for yourself and for those around you. That's why we always ask people like, yo, bring your family members, bring your friends, bring those. Like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join us on these lives. We desire for your voice to be a part of man, even if you have a question. We desire it. It's a conversational space. It's not That doesn't work. Being in conversation, you start to recognize how many more things that you have in common. And on top of that, if we work together, how we both can benefit. That's how truly being a good businessman, which we've seen for time, to me, he's never been a good businessman. He's a good marketer. You got to give credit where credit's due. He's a very good marketer. He knows how to market himself. And then through that, those marketing dollars, use that to just keep positioning. So you can't hate the game. You can hate some of the exploits. But he's a good marketer. He's a terrible businessman. Terrible. Terrible, 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 terrible. But let us move on, so we're not just stuck on this. Now, where the three pillars converge: financial literacy times geopolitics, tariffs, energy shocks from the Iran conflict, currency volatility made personal finance decisions geopolitically loaded. This is what's happened over the past 6 months. We're dealing with what has happened over the past 6 months for the first time in a generation. Ontology times geopolitical. Who controls the narrative of war, sanctions, and economic nationalism determines which reality billions of people act on, how they spend, save, and vote. And finally, ontology times finance. Now we're putting, those two together as they're working together. The American dream is being redefined. 61% of Americans now say saying owning a business is the new financial success. Entrepreneurship as autonomy, not just income.